Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 199 based on novel. So let's start. Even though Shu Tianran was still affected by Du Buzi's soul core, he was still able to move around under the protection from the golden shield above the Sun-Moon sacrificial altar. As he reascended to the 7th floor of the sacrificial altar, he pointed at the sky with his right hand as a long golden sword appeared in his hand. Following which, his bright voice echoed into the distance within the Sun-Moon Empire. I have been doted upon by the heavens, and have since inherited this throne. May the heavens above us protect the citizens of the Sun-Moon Empire against whoever might dare to challenge their fury. Today, I shall borrow the power of the heavens and suppress whoever threatens our way of living. He or she shall perish, never to be reborn. May the light of our Sun-Moon Empire shine upon our land forever and always. At the very next instant, Shu Tianran's body started to radiate a golden glow. A cold and solemn look formed on his face as a bolt of purple lightning emerged from his body. Suddenly, his body started to emit a purple-gold flash which contrasted against the dark skies as he became the center of attention. With his sword pointed towards the sky, he made a waving motion as though he were commanding something. Following which, the 4 humongous beams of light in the distance suddenly left their original path as they started to bend and shoot across the Sun-Moon sacrificial altar. Even though Du Buzi's soul core had locked up the surrounding space, it was useless against the 4 gigantic beams of light which spread out and became a gigantic horizontal barrier. At this very instant, the charging of the soul core seemed to have ended, and it started to plunge toward the Sun-Moon sacrificial altar. A piercing white light flashed as the barrier formed just in time to envelope the millions of lives below it, including half of the radiant city which was not too far away. Chink cake. This bright ringing sound would be a sound which the millions of lives would never forget. At this very instant, the world's time and space came to a standstill. This time round, even Shu Tianran, who was standing within the barrier, stopped moving. Boom! A jade-green glow started to expand as huge patches of darkness bloomed behind it. This time around, they did not come in the form of dark clouds. It was almost as if night had descended upon the world. There seemed to be countless stars and constellations in this sky. But there was definitely more darkness in this sky, which appeared to be consuming everything in its way. The huge white barrier started to tremble as its powerful glow started to quiver under the pressure from the jade-green glow. The overwhelming pressure from the jade-green glow, which seemed like the heavenly might, started to increase to its maximum. Shu Tianran started to show signs of unease and disbelief. As he stood firm to withstand the immense pressure coming from above him, he started to find it difficult to breathe. Shu Tianran's 9 soul rings started to rise as a giant purple dragon, his martial soul, took form behind his back. That was his true strength, 9 rings. The Emperor of the Sun-Moon Empire might be around 30 years old, but he was already a titled Doluor. Furthermore, he owned a powerful martial soul, a purple brilliant heaven-destroying dragon. As he focused and directed his energies into the sky, his powerful abilities were now fully revealed. However, he faced heavenly might. Heavenly might summoned by Du Buzi. Nevertheless, the jade-green glow was still kept outside by the enhanced white barrier. However, Shu Tianran, who had been proudly standing above the Sun-Moon sacrificial altar, started to vomit blood as he collapsed onto the ground. Boom! The deafening sound echoed for several moments before it stopped. Beneath the Sun-Moon sacrificial altar, the civilians who were suspended in mid-air fell down as chaos broke out within the city. The scary explosion left behind a sky filled with blazing white light. Huge waves of soul power rippled across the sky, traveling more than 100 miles away and shaving the peaks off the mountains nearest to the city. Your Majesty! Juzi was the first to get to the Sun-Moon sacrificial altar. Just now, at the moment right before the huge explosion hit the barrier, she felt as if her throat had been ensnared in someone's grip. Because she was the nearest to the 7th floor, she could feel the direct impact. Shu Tianran's heavy injury was not a result of Du Buzi's mad soul core explosion, but the effects of his thoughts which had manifested in the form of heavenly might. Yes, the soul core explosion was indiscriminate, but its attack on everything around it was blocked by the mystical power originating from Radiant City. However, after the explosion had begun, Dubuzi's purest desire to murder Xu Tianran penetrated through the two defense lines and landed on Xu Tianran. The self-destruction of an ultimate Doluo was simply this frightening. If Xu Tianran had not achieved the rank of a title Doluo, his soul would have been shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Dubuzi had achieved all four of his objectives, just as he had promised before his death. Even though he had pretended to be the bait here, the real target had always been to destroy Xu Tianran. Juzi hugged Xu Tianran as she frantically attempted to inject her soul power into his body. However, she found much to her surprise that she was unable to do so. There was a serious conflict between Dubuzi's mad spiritual power and Xu Tianran's own spiritual power within his body. They were like fire and water, unaccommodating towards one another. Because of this battle which was raging within Xu Tianran's body, his mouth and nose started to bleed as his face became increasingly pale. Right now, Juzi demonstrated her ability as the War God Empress to stay calm in tense situations. She immediately scooped Xu Tianran from the ground and retrieved his sound-amplifying soul tool. She announced, "My dear people, our emperor had used himself as the conduit to draw upon the power of the heavens to destroy our enemy. While the enemy has died, our emperor has also sustained some injuries. I, as the War God Empress appointed by the emperor himself, promise that as long as the emperor and I are around, we can definitely safeguard the prosperity of our Sun Moon Empire. Our emperor has only sustained some minor injuries. All of you can rest assured that he will be fine. Now, please follow the army's orders and return to Radiant City. Anyone who dares to make trouble shall face the death penalty." The chaos outside subsided after the people heard Juzi's words. "God of War! God of War! God of War!" The army suddenly started to cheer in unison. Their united cheering covered the chaotic noise in the city. As the Empress and Goddess of War of the Sun Moon Empire, Juzi's position in the army had long been elevated to that of a military idol. Under Xu Tianran's designs, her reputation had long surpassed that of its most important generals. After hearing her words, the soldiers in the army released a celebratory cheer that came from the bottom of their hearts. After all, an impending disaster had just been stopped by their emperor. At this moment, the civilians started to calm down as they started to join in the cheers. No matter what, even though the grand sacrificial ceremony had been disrupted, millions of civilians had witnessed something awe-inspiring. At least in their eyes, justice had triumphed over evil, and evil had been vanquished. As the dark clouds in the sky slowly scattered, the land was once again irradiated with warm sunlight. Everything, including Long Xiaoyao, which was previously in the sky, had disappeared. Hui Yuhao had observed the progression of events from afar. He was overwhelmed with sadness after witnessing the death of Dubuzi. Even though he did not understand his objectives, and had only interacted with him a few times, Hui Yuhao had seen how he had detonated his own soul core for his country. How could he not feel sad for him? Furthermore, the secrets of the body were still with him. Hui Yuhao lowered his body and bowed solemnly at the sky, which was beginning to clear up. "Dubuzi, regardless of what has happened, you are undeniably a hero for your country and its people. I will definitely bring your heroic stories back to the Heavenly Soul Empire. I will also pass on your secrets of the body. You can rest assured that I will do my best to bring the rest away." Without the catastrophe and countless deaths that Hui Yuhao had expected, he naturally had no need to purify any souls. He did not know when Tang Wutong appeared by his side. As he looked at her, Hui Yuhao felt guilty about what he had done earlier. "Wutong, I am sorry. I was rash again." Tang Wutong stepped forward and held his hand. "I understand. There's nothing inherently wrong with what you did. But next time, do not leave me behind. I want to be with you regardless of whether we live or die. As long as we are together, we will have better odds of surviving anything." Hui Yuhao held her hands tightly and replied, "Let's head to the meeting point." If I did not guess wrongly, Dubuzi's sacrifice was meant to pin down the enemies near the sacrificial altar. This would probably mean that the Heavenly Sun Doluo's side should almost be done. Let's meet up with them and return to the Heavenly Soul Empire. Both of them leapt up into the air and disappeared into the sky as they flew towards the pre-planned meeting point. It was undeniable that Dubuzi's death was a brilliant move. The leaders of Radiant City were all busy trying to maintain order after the explosion, and did not have the time to bother with anything else. Because the Emperor was heavily injured, the Sun Moon Empire lacked a leader who could organize the country. It was the best time to leave the scene under such chaotic conditions. Just now, he had managed to catch a glimpse of the Sun Moon Empire's war god Empress, Juzi. She had become a lot more elegant and beautiful. Juzi, you will probably be heading back onto the battlefield in the near future. Do you know how much I wish we won't meet on the battlefield? The meeting point was at the suburban area of the Eastern District. This place was nearest to the Star Luo Empire. Hui Yuhao had originally thought that the plan to misdirect them was a little too simple. But after he saw how Dubuzi detonated his soul core, he realized how carefully crafted the plan was. By the time Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong reached the meeting point, there were already 4 titled Dolor waiting there. All of them were transcendent Dolor and did not seem particularly pleased with what had just happened. 2 of them happened to hail from the body sect, and they had obviously witnessed Dubuzi's self-destruction. My condolences. There was nothing else Hui Yuhao could say as he dragged Tang Wutong to retreat to a corner. The atmosphere was simply too suffocating. After witnessing one of the most powerful and revered cultivators in the world of Soul Masters fall, they were all still trying to grapple with what had just happened. It was a huge blow for everyone. 10 shadows returned soundlessly 15 minutes later. The Heavenly Sun Dolor was in the lead, and he was holding a bag as he immediately lowered his voice once he touched the ground and said, "Let's go. Radiant City has increased security across the entire city, so let's get out of here. You're back in command, Yuhao." Hui Yuhao could tell from the Heavenly Sun Dolor's solemn expression that he knew about the body Dolor's death. He nodded, and immediately shared spiritual detection with everyone. The others didn't delay as they rose into the air and surged toward the sky. But Hui Yuhao had just taken everyone into the air when a dumbfounded look appeared on his face. His spiritual power was incredibly sharp, and the first thing had to do to share his spiritual detection was to cover everyone around him. There should be 16 people including the titled Dolor, Tang Wutong, and himself, because the body Dolor would be missing from their initial lineup. But when he brought everyone into the air, he could clearly hear a 17th heartbeat. There was another life form in the Heavenly Sun Dolor's grasp. What is that? Hui Yuhao subconsciously stretched his spiritual detection over, and the first thing he felt was a gentle but weak spiritual undulation. It was a world apart compared to those titled Dolor, but this gentle spiritual undulation made his heart tremble vigorously as an inexplicable sensation coursed over his entire body. The first thing that appeared in his spiritual detection was a small swaddling cloth, which contained a soundly sleeping infant. That heartbeat and spiritual undulation belonged to the infant. Inside the Sun Moon Empire's royal palace. What? The Crown Prince has been. Juzi stared at the servant girl who was reporting back to her, shaking all over. The color had drained from her face completely. No, no. Juzi shouted hysterically as she charged crazily into her bedroom. Even a person as calm as she was fell apart when she discovered that her child had disappeared into thin air. She was very calm when the body Dolor, Dubuzi, was detonating his soul core and causing an apocalyptic calamity. She was still calm when she watched her husband, the Sun Moon Empire's emperor, Xu Qianran, fall from the sacrificial pedestal. But when she found out that her flesh and blood had suddenly gone missing, how could she keep her cool? She couldn't bother with anchoring the overall situation as she ran back into her bedroom, crazed. This child is. Hui Yuhao stared at the Heavenly Sun Dolor with wide eyes and open jaw. Even though he could already faintly guess this incredibly young infant's identity, he still found it a little hard to believe. A shameful look appeared on the Heavenly Sun Dolor's face. We don't have any other choice. How can we send the Sun Moon Empire into disarray without doing this? It's a pity that we couldn't assassinate Xu Qianran. Otherwise, the Sun Moon Empire would undoubtedly descend into chaos, and the Dolor continent's 3 native empires would no longer be burdened. Hui Yuhao was astounded. Tang Wutong was equally astonished, because they never expected that the three empires' true goal of sending out 15 titled dolor with the price of the body dolor's suicidal sacrifice was this tiny baby. Every doubt in Hui Yuhao's mind evaporated in this moment. He finally understood what this operation's true mission was. They weren't here for a single task, they were here for two: assassinate Xu Qianran and kidnap his crown prince, Xu Yunhan. The reason why the body dolor, Dubuzi, was so willing to sacrifice himself probably had a lot to do with his body's condition. Otherwise, there was no reason for such a formidable individual to kill himself like that. He placed his own life on the life with the aim of assassinating Xu Qianran, and at the same time, he used his formidable strength to attract all the attention of Radiant City's core powers. He did that to create an opportunity for the Heavenly Sun Dolor and the others. Just as the Heavenly Sun Dolor had said, if Xu Qianran was assassinated and his son went missing, the Sun-Moon Empire, which had just settled down, would descend into chaos. This situation was what the continent's three native empires wanted most, and this plan was made perfect with the body dolor's sacrifice. But these were 15 titled dolor. Some of the strongest individuals in the world actually made a move against an infant. Hui Yuhao finally understood why the White Tiger Duke had a shameful look on his face before they left the Mingdo mountain range. They couldn't beat their enemies in a war, so they had to make a move on their children. No matter how cruel war was, such despicable methods filled his heart with contempt and disdain. This was especially so because the child that they had abducted wasn't just Xu Qianran's son, and he wasn't just the Sun-Moon Empire's crown prince. He was also Zhu Zi's son. The image of Zhu Zi crumbling from grief almost immediately surfaced in Hui Yuhao's mind. Zhu Zi was an orphan, and every single one of her family members had died horribly in a war. This had already caused her personality to twist slightly. Now that she had a child, her own flesh and blood, but her child was suddenly taken away from her. It wasn't hard to imagine the kind of blow that she would take. The Heavenly Sun Dolor explained no further, and they quickly accelerated into the distance. Hui Yuhao pulled Tang Wutong along, and they were still using imitation and spiritual detection to control the formation. But Hui Yuhao's mind felt very suffocated. The reason why the body dolor chose to sacrifice himself instead of personally kidnapping this child was probably also because of guilt and shame. But how could they have such a plan? Hui Yuhao shut his eyes painfully. Tang Wutong passed a message to his mind. You have to remain calm, Yuhao. Let's leave this dangerous place first before anything else. Yes, Hui Yuhao nodded gently. He knew that there was nothing he could do, at least not right now. In front of 14 titled dolor, and also when everyone's hearts were feeling heavy because of Dubuzi's death, there was nothing he could say that would change things. Instead, his words would be counterproductive. They had to leave this place first, and he had to fulfill his promise to the body dolor and take everyone back. Just 30 minutes after they departed, Radiant City exploded like a hornet's nest that had been impaled. Every single powerful soul master, every individual from the Holy Ghost Church, and every soldier from the army moved out at once in search of their crown prince. Xu Qianran had woken up inside Radiant City's royal palace. He was leaning against the bed, and his face was as pale as could be, but his eyes were full of hatred and resentment. He was very severely injured, and not only his body was hurt. What was more frightening was that his spirit had been heavily damaged, and his spiritual sea was almost shattered. If the body dolor's final strike hadn't been blocked by those two barriers and his personal Class 9 spiritual-type defensive soul tool, he would probably have been completely annihilated by that tremendous pressure. But his nightmare returned once he woke up. His crown prince, Xu Yunhan, had been kidnapped by unknown individuals. Xu Qianran had already murdered a bunch of people because of this. Even though his face was as white as paper, he couldn't hide the deep-seated murderousness in his eyes. Very good. Good, body dolor. Very good, Holy Ghost Church. Xu Qianran gritted his teeth so hard that he almost shattered them. If the body dolor hadn't sacrificed himself, how could he have attracted everyone's attention? If the Holy Ghost Church hadn't been selfish, how could those powerful kidnappers have succeeded? Xu Qianran was full of hate, and he wanted to kill everyone around him. He had just consolidated his throne, and this grand sacrificial ceremony was to be the true starting point of his glorious empire. But something like this had to happen. The grand sacrificial ceremony was forced to end, and so many citizens' lives were lost. This dealt a heavy blow to his reputation and influence, and more importantly, somebody had kidnapped his crown prince. "Stop crying!" Xu Qianran growled at Zhu Zi, who was kneeling beneath him. He began to cough uncontrollably after his exclamation. Zhu Zi's expression was possibly even paler than Xu Qianran's. Her voice was trembling as she said, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty. You have to save Yunhan, you have to save him. He's only a year and 3 months old. Get up." Xu Qianran lowered his voice as he spoke. Zhu Zi supported herself on the table beside her and struggled to stand up. Xu Qianran pointed at the bed in front of him, and Zhu Zi went over to sit down. She looked like she had lost her spirit in this moment. "Zhu Zi, I understand what you're feeling. But right now, you have to understand what those people want by kidnapping Yunhan." Of course Zhu Zi understood. But the more she understood, the more dejected she felt. Her eyes were filled with a pleading expression as she said, "Your Majesty, Yunhan is our child. He's your crown prince. No matter what, you have to save him. I'm begging you. I'm begging you." A brutal look flashed across Xu Qianran's eyes. "Save him? How am I to save him? His kidnappers are definitely the body doulos' accomplices, and their goal is simple. They wish to stop me from restarting the war, stop me from trampling all over the continent's 3 empires. Do they really think that they can stop me like that? If I can have one son, then I can have another. Since they have taken away the crown prince, then I will sacrifice their lives to pay for his. Zhu Zi, you have to gather yourself immediately. I can let you command the armies and launch an invasion against them immediately. Use their blood to pay for our son." "No," Zhu Zi screamed hysterically, and her expression immediately became as white as paper. She had never expected Xu Qianran to say something like that after but a moment of thought. His words were undoubtedly a death sentence for her son. All that talk about how he could have a second one because he had a first. The crown prince wasn't his flesh and blood in the first place, he was just another tool. Of course, Xu Qianran wouldn't feel his heart ache. But Yunhan was her son. How could she not care about his safety? Xu Qianran's eyes grew fierce and sinister as he lifted his hand and grabbed Zhu Zi by the neck. His insidious face brimmed with murderousness as he growled, "You dare to go against me?" Zhu Zi's pretty face grew red and swollen as she found it hard to breathe, but her eyes were staring unblinkingly at Xu Qianran. She wasn't willing to give any quarter, and her entire body was quivering from anger. If she had felt any gratitude towards Xu Qianran before, then everything in her heart had vaporized in this moment. Had Xu Qianran not trained her into a tool when he brought her back all those years ago? She had saved his life afterwards, and in her heart, everything that she owed him had been returned. The reason why she was willing to do all kinds of things for him was because she wanted to get her revenge. But how could she not have any feelings at all when they had been together for so long? But Zhu Zi truly understood how naive she was in this moment. How could any sentiment in the world fetter a man like that? All the yearning and feelings in her heart were but illusions, and she found herself so laughable that she had placed so much hope on a person like that. Xu Qianran felt his heart skip a beat as he stared into her eyes. An intense pain jolted his brain as he subconsciously released his grip, and Zhu Zi fell down beside him. Xu Qianran supported his forehead with his hand as he shut his eyes in agony. "Forget it. Just settle this however you want. We'll try all we can to search for the crown prince, and we'll talk afterwards if that doesn't work out. You may go." Zhu Zi got onto her knees, trembling. She lowered her head, and her voice sounded hoarse and began to shake as she said to Xu Qianran, "Thank you, Your Majesty." With that, she crawled out of Xu Qianran's bedroom on her knees. What Xu Qianran couldn't see was that Zhu Zi's eyes were filled with resentment and ferocity, but she completely hid her murderousness and didn't show any of that at all. Long Xiaoyao stood in a pitch-black room without a single ray of light at all with his hands behind his back. His eyes were filled with desolation. "You're hurt?" A mildly hoarse and shrill voice could be heard, and a layer of dark red colors glowed inside the room. The death god Doluo, Ishishue silently appeared not far behind him. I haven't tasted the feeling of being hurt in a long time. I didn't expect old poison to be so brutal and intense, that he would choose such a path. That he would rather die for his country in front of millions instead of living for a few years more. Another from our generation has fallen. Ishishue said plainly, "Why aren't you asking me why I refuse to help you? Don't you wish to interrogate me about that?" Long Xiaoyao shook his head. "Why should I interrogate you? Why should I ask when I know the answer? The truth is, I've always known who I am to you. But I'm afraid there might not be much left for me to give you." Yi Shishue's voice suddenly turned cold. "I will not stop you if you want to leave. You can leave whenever you want to." Long Xiaoyao turned around and stared at Yi Shishue's pale face. His voice immediately turned gentle, and he said, "Shishue, I would have left a long time ago if I wanted to. Why would I wait to do that now? Since I made a promise back then that I would use the remainder of my life to pay you back for the sins that I have committed, then I will stay true to my word. The reason why I said there might not be much left to give is because every person's life will eventually come to an end. Dubuzi's life has a limit, and so does mine." Yi Shishue's body quivered as she arrived in front of Long Xiaoyao in a flash. Her fingers had blood-red fingernails, and she pressed her hand against Long Xiaoyao's chest. Long Xiaoyao didn't move, nor did he attempt to stop her at all. He just let her plant her palm firmly on his chest. Yi Shishue's expression slowly changed after a few moments. "You're so severely injured?" Long Xiaoyao laughed, and his laughter was extremely warm. "I'm very happy to feel just a thread of your care and concern. Don't worry, I won't die for a while, and I still have to protect you for some time. No matter how you treat me, Shishue, you'll always be the only woman that I've ever loved in my heart." Yi Shishue's breathing suddenly became rushed, and her eyes turned ice-cold and evil as she stared insidiously at Long Xiaoyao. She spun around after a few moments and disappeared in a ray of red light. A dash of bitterness appeared on Long Xiaoyao's face. There wasn't any sadness, only a trace of deep regret. He closed his eyes and said, "I have wanted to leave this world for a long time, but in the end, I still can't bear to lose you." Crisp crying sounds echoed throughout the skies, and the heavenly sun Dolor who was soaring through the air suddenly paused. His expression also became a little awkward. "Mama, mama, mama." A childish voice rang out from the swaddling cloth, and this rank 97 title Dolor's first reaction was to stop. The winds were strong, and he had been using his soul power to protect the bag of cloth in his bosom. He could feel some intense struggling coming from, and that came with vigorous bawling. This transcendent Dolor no longer knew what to do. The heavenly sun Dolor stopped, and everyone else stopped one after another as they stared at the bag at his chest. The heavenly sun Dolor relaxed his grip a little, and a tiny head poked out from within his arms. It was a beautiful little boy. His skin was as white as snow, and so tender that a drop of water could appear from a gentle squeeze. He had dark black hair, and his large eyes were also black. Even though he was crying so hard that mucus and tears were flowing all over his face, everybody who could see him couldn't help but give him praise. What a beautiful little child. The clothes he was wearing were made from excellent fabric, and it made his tender skin even more eye-catching. His crying sounds were extremely bright and loud. The heavenly sun Dolor had only been thinking about completing his task. Furthermore, the Sun Moon Empire's crown prince had been very quiet, because he was in a deep sleep when he had taken him away. But the group of titled Dolor became a little helpless once he woke up. The youngest titled Dolor participating in this operation was at least 80 years old, excluding Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong. Even if they had family when they were younger, they wouldn't personally raise a child with their status and identities. You're a girl, can you coax him? The heavenly sun Dolor arrived in front of Tang Wutong as he spoke and passed the child to her. Tang Wutong was a little dumbfounded. She was a girl, but she was still young and unmarried. Even though she spent all her time with Hui Yuhao, they had never done anything. She subconsciously took the little boy, and couldn't help but feel anxious and panicky because she didn't know how to hold him. Perhaps a female's glory began to show its power because the little boy immediately stopped crying once he was in her arms. He blinked his enormous eyes as he stared at Tang Wutong, and stuck his index finger in his mouth. He seemed very curious. The heavenly Sun Dolor immediately heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the boy was no longer crying. "Auntie, milk." The little fellow suddenly spoke, and Tang Wutong's face flushed red. Furthermore, the little fellow didn't give her any chance at all as he stretched out his pudgy little hands to grab her shirt. There were still so many people around her, and Tang Wutong immediately screamed out loud. Hui Yuhao was also startled, and he almost didn't hesitate as he took the child from Tang Wutong's embrace. Tang Wutong had that mysterious seal on her body. If this little child accidentally touched a place that he wasn't supposed to touch and triggered the seal, the retaliation produced wasn't something that a child who was barely more than a year old could take. The little boy didn't get what he wanted, and immediately began to bawl once more. Hui Yuhao hadn't raised a child before either. He didn't know what to do, and reacted in a flurry as he hurriedly and gently patted the child's back in an attempt to placate him. Strangely, Hui Yuhao patted the child's back just a few times before the kid stopped crying once more, and stared at Hui Yuhao with those large black eyes of his. He was just so cute. Anybody would want to pinch and squeeze those cute and chubby cheeks of his. Anybody would even feel like giving him a kiss. Furthermore, for some reason, an inexplicable feeling flashed across Hui Yuhao's heart when he stared into the baby's eyes. This is Zhu Zi's child. Hui Yuhao didn't get to think for long before the boy began to cry once more. The heavenly Sun Dolor frowned and said, "What should we do? He's too noisy. Why don't we knock him out?" Tang Wutong immediately frowned. "He's just a baby. How can you even say that? What if you hurt him? Is he hungry?" Hui Yuhao thought about how the boy wanted to suckle her breast. He immediately said, "He should be hungry. But a small infant like this should want to drink milk, yes." Everyone's eyes went to Tang Wutong once that was said. Tang Wutong was greatly embarrassed. "Why are all of you staring at me? I don't have any." One of the title Dolor who was relatively more experienced said, "This baby should be around a year and 3 months old. He should be able to eat normal food. Even though he can drink milk, that's not a necessity. We are quite some distance from Radiant City by now, so why don't we get him something to eat and let him calm down before anything else? Yes, it seems like we have no choice." The heavenly Sun Dolor felt a little humiliated when Tang Wutong chided him. But he thought about what he had said, and how had he wanted to make a move against a tiny baby who was barely more than a year old, and he felt extremely awkward and guilty, so he immediately agreed. Everyone descended from the sky and found a relatively obscure hill. Nobody had any experience feeding a baby. Finally, Hui Yuhao was the one who took that responsibility. No matter what, this boy was Zhu Zi's son. He was very clear that there was nothing he could do or say to these title Dolor for now, so he would have to wait for everyone to leave the Sun Moon Empire before anything else. He had to protect this baby, no matter what, because the child was innocent no matter what his identity was. Furthermore, he was Zhu Zi's flesh and blood. There wasn't any delicious or sumptuous food out in the wilderness. Hui Yuhao boiled some water. He softened some dry rations by simmering them in water before he gave them to the little boy. This video will end here.